Hello and welcome to BQ Prime. Today's conversation is going to be about Air India's mammoth aircraft order. And with this order of 470 aircrafts, Indian aviation has actually squarely landed on everyone's radar. Joining us to discuss the same is Mr. Jitender Bhargava, former ED Air India and author of The Descent of Air India. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bhargava, and always a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bhargav, my first question coming to you is your initial thoughts with regards to this mammoth order of 470 aircrafts that Air India has placed, because with India poised to be the third largest aviation market by the end of the decade, it is with much enthusiasm that stakeholders are finally seeing stability in the Indian skies, it seems. That's what this number suggests.
It has been more than a decade now that we've been talking about India emerging as the third largest market in the world after USA. But the constraining factor was Air India. With government ownership and government having its own priorities for health, education, infrastructure, etc., it could not have expanded Air India's fleet. So when it took the decision, and a right one, of disinvesting Air India, it came to Tata's, who had originally founded the airline, and Tata's made one significant statement. In fact, two statements when they regained control of the airline. We'll live the JRD Tata's dream. And Mr. Natarajan Chandrasekhar said that we will give world-class airline. Now, what does it indicate basically is that we are talking about establishing Air India as a major player in the world. Now, India has been a growing market, everybody acknowledges. But because Air India couldn't grow, the Gulf carriers started taking away India's traffic. Southeast Asian carriers were funneling traffic from various Indian cities over to their hubs and the United States and Europe. Now, India was a loser in that way. So now with this mega order being placed by Tata yesterday on Airbus and Boeing, 400 narrow-bodied aircraft, and 70 long-haul aircraft. What does it indicate? And to me, it's as if they are trying to make up for lost time as well. That we will induct planes aggressively. The 6 of the A350s long-haul large-capacity aircraft will be inducted in the second half of 2023, which is only a few months away. So when you have the Tata's vision being executed, it sends a very to the airlines, to the Indian diaspora abroad, that here comes Air India in a totally new avatar.
Right.
So the network expansion that will take place with the induction of aircraft, the qualitative improvement that will take, where is the question somebody will ask, why should I travel any other airline but Air India?
Right. So, Mr. Bhargav, overall, with this kind of an order, what would it actually mean with regards to competition? Because clearly, with the bifurcation between the narrow and the wide aircrafts, the indication that we're getting is both. It's looking to increase business not only in the domestic sphere but also in the international routes. Now, in the domestic market, you clearly know that Indigo is leading with much higher market share. Do you think this kind of a move is actually going to be able to make Air India take market share from the other players?
Even before the order was placed, go back 3-4 months ago, Air India had made a statement, a public statement, that their vision is to capture 30% of the domestic market in 5 years' time. Air India, Airbus, the whole Tata-owned airlines. So they are probably trying to fulfill that kind of an ambition. Multiple aircraft being deployed, network being expanded. That's one part, domestic. Then you have these narrow-bodied aircraft will also be deployed for destinations in the Gulf, Southeast Asia. Why should Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airways, Emirates, Gulf Air, and Etihad dominate the Indian market? Why should Indian carriers, as per the bilateral agreements, they are allowed a certain number of flights into India, and we are allowed a certain equal number of flights. But we have not been able to fulfill that numbers. So with the large order being placed, induction of new aircraft will be able to have more of our flights operating to these things. Now, when you talk of the 70 long-haul aircraft, they'll be flying India to Europe and United States. What have been witnessed in the past is that people have been funneling the Indian traffic from various Indian states onto the hub and then flying to United States and Europe. So these 70 aircraft plus the 47 weekly flights that Air India already operates to 5 destinations in the United States. Look at the kind of mammoth network that it will have.
Right. So overall, if you see in terms of the order breakdown as well, it's pretty interesting because currently the entire long haul and ultra long haul fleet comprises of Boeing aircrafts, right? So on
not necessarily, no. Can I correct you?
Sure.
You see, 40 of the A350 aircraft are large capacity long haul aircraft. And 30 of the aircraft are on Boeing. The Dreamliners, the 777 aircraft. Correct. So it's a balancing, one can say, a geopolitical balance, that you have the European airline, Airbus manufacturer, being satisfied with 250 aircraft and 220 aircraft being placed on Boeing. Also, the totality that we look at, and this perhaps is a fact, that you had the President of the United States also announcing with great pride that, look, it's going to create 1 million jobs in 42 states. President Macron being personally present along with the Indian Prime Minister when the Airbus deal was announced. So it basically shows the importance that it's going to play on employment, because both Europe and USA are fearing recession. So the job creation. It's not that the India job creation will not take place in India, because every aircraft means 10 new pilots, about 40, 50 cabin crew. So then you do the multiplier effect on it.
Absolutely.
And then you have the ground handling, airport staff, maintenance staff available, everything. So it is when the world recognizes India as a bright spot in the global economy, we are demonstrating it with evidence. And Tatas have also validated the argument that people used to question earlier, why disinvest Air India? It only shows the kind of potential that Air India had, but was going unexplored.
So overall, if you see, Mr. Bhargav, both the agreements with the OEMs actually include options for additional deliveries that actually locks in capacity plans for several years to come, right? Now, from a financing perspective, what's the kind of strategy do you expect Air India to use, if taking the entire orders book and the order size into consideration?
One is we must not overlook the fact that the current fleet of Air India, the induction was in 2007 and 2011. So these aircraft also aging. So part of the order that has gone will be a replacement thing. And then you have for the expansion, augmentation of the fleet taking place. And they will certainly fly to several new destinations, several new Indian cities. And if we can see the trailer for the film to come out, is that in the last 3-4 months, while Air India was previously operating non-stop services to the United States only from Mumbai and Delhi, they have started operating flights to San Francisco from Bangalore. So they will probably extend this kind of thing to Calcutta, to Chennai, wherever the demands exist. So passengers are going to be gainers. And let's look at the United States side. Air India currently flies to 5 destinations in the US. There is concentration of Indians in Los Angeles, for example, Houston, for example. Air India does not operate. So they have to come to the nearest airport and then take a flight. With the new planes being added, I'm sure Air India will add these destinations also on the network. So it's a win-win situation for not just Air India, as I've often said, for the country India.
Right. So overall, would it be a strategy that would include sale and leaseback as well as ownership of wide-body assets? Because clearly, probably they would want to own these over the life of the aircraft, borrowing on strategies from European competitors. Do you think
I hope you are aware of the fact that I retired 13 years ago and I wouldn't be privy of this fact, whether they're going to sale and lease back. But all I can say from my experience is most airlines follow this course for a certain percentage of the fleet because it's beneficial for cash flow.
Right. So overall, from here on, not to be lost in this announcement that we're talking of, clearly Tata Group is working on bringing commercial aircraft manufacturing into the country as well. So effectively, this would actually mean that Airbus may set up an assembly line in India. Do you think that the government will likely push for a similar
These are
outcome with Boeing?
hypothetical questions.
Absolutely.
I don't think, but all I can say is with the Prime Minister being present yesterday, when the deal was announced, Tata's would have got the best deal possible. I'm not undermining the fact that Tata's wouldn't have bargained a good deal, but it would have been sweetened by the Prime Minister for sure, because his emphasis on Atmanirbharta is that everything must be produced locally would have played a part in it. And I'm not privy to what the small letters in the agreement is at the moment. My knowledge of information is as much as yours from the public statements.
Right. So overall, from a competition perspective, if you have to look at Air India and an Indigo that we already mentioned earlier, Indigo, more than 55% of the market is what they have. Clearly, if you see in terms of Air India, if you combine all the four major entities, that's Air India Express, Connect, as well as Vistara, it still is in that 25 to 28% kind of market share, right? Now, taking the fleet size into consideration as well, how difficult or how easy, according to you, it's going to be for them to start competing in terms of market share?
No, they will compete, and let's not also overlook the fact that the Indian market will also grow, requiring more aircraft deployment, frequencies of services, expansion of network. Some of these cities which are currently underserved or not served at all will be added onto the network, etc. So we should basically at this moment conclude that look, brighter days are ahead. Or put it in Modi's language, achhe din aane wale hain as long as aviation is concerned. Okay?
So, absolutely, I understand what you're saying on that end, but from a analysis perspective, it is going to be deployment that will actually translate into cash flows and eventual profits, right? And taking India as a market, we're a very price-sensitive market, which is coupled with constrained airports. There is a growing trend towards segmentation, which actually means that it's actually going to be razor-thin margins, if any, and that is a reality for an Indian
what
market.
I would say is be positive. There will be no constraints at the airport. Terminal 2 at Bangalore has just been inaugurated a few weeks ago. Mumbai airport is going to be inaugurated not very long from now. Government is seized of the issue. You can't say, look, we're going to order 470 aircraft in that. Indigo has another 250 aircraft in the pipeline. We want to aspire to be the third largest market in the world, but have constraints at this point. I am sanguine. These problems are not going to be there. Government is seized of the issues and will take requisite action. And let's look at brighter days ahead for Indian aviation. The world has recognized India's potential. Earlier, now Indian carriers will be flying and dominating. The presence, as I said yesterday, of Joe Biden, President Macron, Prime Minister only goes on to show the importance that civil aviation in India commands. Thank you.
Right. But do you think, Mr. Bhargav, overall there could be more aggressive in terms of pricing? Last question in terms of pricing. Do you think there will be more aggressive pricing policies across as well with international competition as well?
This has been an old story. Competition does bring in the people fix the fares, but the current criticism of the airlines is all missed. With the war between Ukraine and Russia, airspace not available. COVID aftermath still not overcome in certain countries, etc. The capacity deployment not being there. All those factors have led to fact the ATF prices have been high. The rupee has been depreciating against dollar, and 70% of the cost of an airline are dollar designated. So, all that kind of a thing has to look at, but we should look at first is safe travel between 2 points. Then comes fares. But the third point that media should be looking at is does all the money that a passenger pays goes to the airline? Or much of it goes to various agencies, airport, government for taxes, etc., etc.
Right.
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 Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Mr. Bhargav. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us.
you.
Thank
Thanks.
you and
Bye.
stay safe.